The sky was never meant to look like this. It was black even in the middle of the day, covered with smoke and fire that stretched from one horizon to the other. Towers of metal, once proud cities of men, were nothing more than broken bones of stone and steel. The air was filled with ash and the bitter smell of burning. Humanity had fought, but humanity had lost. In the ruins of what was once a living world, silence ruled. Only the sound of crackling fires and distant explosions broke through the heavy air. They came from the stars, and they came without mercy. The invaders had no faces that humans could understand. Their machines were taller than skyscrapers, their weapons brighter than the sun. On the first day, half of Earth's armies were gone. On the second day, cities began to fall one after another. By the end of the first week, the war was no longer a war. It was a slow killing. Survivors scattered into the shadows, hiding in caves, underground bunkers, and broken subway tunnels. Every scream that rose to the sky was a reminder of the end. Among the ruins, a small group of survivors huddled in the basement of a collapsed building. Their faces were thin, their eyes hollow, but in their silence there was something else too. Fear that had no end. They whispered to each other about what they had seen. Alien ships that cut mountains in half with a single beam. Cities turned to glass from fire that fell from the clouds. People running, only to be swallowed by machines with sharp legs and glowing red eyes. Humanity had always believed the Earth was strong, that no matter how many wars were fought, no matter how much damage humans did, the planet would keep turning. But now, the planet itself seemed broken. Forests burned for weeks without end. Rivers boiled as machines walked across them. Animals fled deeper into the wild, but nowhere was safe. It was not just humanity that fell. It was the world itself. Still, something strange began to stir beneath all the smoke and ruin. Survivors noticed it in small moments. The ground shaking even when no alien machines were near. A sudden flash of lightning that destroyed a patrol ship in the middle of a clear sky. The air would grow heavy, almost like the planet was breathing. But no one dared to believe. How could the Earth itself fight back? People laughed bitterly at the idea. Yet deep inside, they wondered. Maybe the planet they had taken for granted was not finished yet. Maybe it was waiting. One of the survivors, an old man who had once been a scientist, spoke in a low voice that carried through the dark basement. He told them that the Earth was alive in ways they never understood. Every forest, every ocean, every stone carried memory. He said that the planet could endure only so much before it would answer. His words frightened the young ones. But his eyes, tired and bright, made them think. If the Earth remembered, then what would it do now? Humanity had been broken, but maybe Earth was not finished. Outside, the aliens continued their destruction. A massive machine tore through the remains of a city block, its claws dragging cars and bodies alike into its furnace core. Above it, a ship hovered in the clouds, raining fire upon anything that still moved. Yet the ground beneath that machine trembled harder and harder, until cracks split across the street. At first it was dismissed as nothing, just the weakness of a dying city. But then the cracks widened. With a sound like thunder, the earth opened and swallowed the machine whole. The fire above hesitated, the ship slowing for the first time. Survivors hiding in the shadows watched in silence. Could this be chance? Or was something far greater at work? That night, the survivors could not sleep. Every sound, every tremor in the ground felt different now. Fear remained, but in its heart there was also a spark of something dangerous. Hope. Hope that maybe the invaders had not won completely. Hope that the planet itself had heard the screams of its children. Hope that Earth would not forgive what had been done. As the survivors closed their eyes, a deep rumble shook the ruins once more. Dust fell from the broken ceiling above them. Somewhere far away, an alien machine screamed in a metallic voice before silence cut it short. The old scientist looked at the others, his face pale in the firelight. He whispered one sentence that none of them would ever forget: "The Earth is awake." And though no one spoke after that, everyone felt the same thought rising in their minds. If Earth was truly alive, then it was angry. If Earth was truly awake, then its enemies had already made the worst mistake possible. Humanity had fallen, but the story was not yet over. The ground itself promised revenge. The next morning came without sunlight. The sky was thick with smoke, turning the world into endless night. The survivors moved carefully through the ruins, stepping over rubble and broken glass. They had no plan, only the instinct to keep moving. Food was scarce, water even scarcer, but something else troubled them more than hunger. The ground would not stop trembling. It was not the heavy, shaking footsteps of alien machines this time. It was different. It was lighter, quicker, almost like a heartbeat pulsing through the soil. The old scientist stopped often to press his hand against the earth. His eyes narrowed each time. He did not speak, but the others could see fear and wonder battling in his gaze. As they moved deeper into the ruined city, the survivors began to notice things that could not be explained. A wall of vines had grown over a collapsed street overnight, green and alive in a place where everything else was dead. Strange flowers pushed through cracks in the concrete, glowing faintly as if carrying their own light. The youngest survivor, a boy no older than 12, touched one of the glowing petals. It pulsed in his hand, as if it were alive and aware of him. The group moved away quickly, unsettled. The old man whispered, almost to himself, "Earth is speaking." Above them, one of the alien ships cut across the black sky, its engines roaring like thunder. It stopped to scan the ground, a red beam sweeping through the ruins. The survivors froze. But then, something happened. A sudden gust of wind rose from nowhere, howling through the shattered buildings. Dust and debris filled the air, scattering the beam. The ship spun, trying to stabilize, and then a bolt of lightning came down with a sound like the heavens breaking. The strike split the ship in half, sending it crashing into the ruins below. The survivors did not move for a long time. When they finally did, no one said it was luck. None of them believed that anymore. The aliens noticed too. They were not blind. Patrols grew more cautious. Machines scanned the skies more often. Yet the disasters kept coming. An alien camp built near a forest was burned to ash after the trees themselves seemed to catch fire without warning. A river near another camp rose suddenly, waves swallowing ships that had landed along its shore. It was as if the planet itself had chosen to fight. The survivors whispered about it in the dark, their voices shaking. Some believed Earth was protecting them. Others feared Earth would not stop until everything, human and alien alike, was gone. The old scientist began to speak more openly now. He told them stories of old legends, how people once believed the Earth was alive, how every mountain and ocean carried a spirit. Maybe those stories were not just myths. Maybe Earth had been patient for too long. He warned them that if the planet had truly awakened, its anger might not be controlled. When a mother protects her children, he said softly, her mercy does not last forever. The younger ones wanted to believe it was protection. They wanted to see the planet as a savior, a force rising for humanity. But even as hope grew, fear sat beside it. What if Earth no longer cared about humans? What if this was not protection but punishment, a judgment against everyone who had ever hurt the planet? The idea haunted them as much as the invaders. That night, as the survivors hid in the ruins of a subway tunnel, they felt another tremor. This one was stronger. Dust rained from the ceiling. In the distance, they heard the sound of metal tearing, and then an alien scream, a sound so sharp and unnatural it froze their blood. The boy asked what it was, but no one answered. The scientist closed his eyes and whispered again, "Earth remembers." The whispers of the Earth grew louder in the days that followed. Survivors hiding in different parts of the world reported the same strange events. Mountains collapsing on alien factories. Storms forming out of clear skies. Creatures of the wild striking with unnatural fury. The planet was no longer silent. Something vast and ancient was moving beneath their feet, watching, listening, and waiting. The aliens began to strike harder, almost as if they sensed the danger. They burned forests, poisoned rivers, and crushed the land with their heavy machines. But the harder they pushed, the more violent the Earth's response became. It was no longer random. It was deliberate. It was war. The survivors could feel it in their bones now. The Earth was alive. The Earth was angry. And the Earth had chosen sides. Humanity had fallen, yes, but perhaps their world had not abandoned them. The whispers in the wind, the tremors in the ground, the fire in the sky, all spoke the same truth. The planet was not finished. The planet was rising. And somewhere deep below the ruined cities, in the core of the Earth where fire never died, something vast and terrible began to stir. The world had changed, and the invaders could feel it. Their machines still roamed the broken cities, their ships still darkened the skies, but there was a hesitation now. It was small at first, hardly noticed, yet it grew each day. The survivors who watched from the shadows saw the difference. The aliens moved slower, scanning the skies and ground with unease. They were not only hunting humans anymore. They were watching for something else, something far greater. The Earth was no longer silent, and its wrath was only beginning. The first great strike came with a storm. Not a normal storm, not one born of weather or chance. It was a wall of black clouds that appeared out of nothing, spreading across the sky in moments. The invaders had built a massive base near the ruins of a coastal city, their machines lining the shore like teeth of a giant beast. They thought themselves safe, but the storm had other plans. Wind screamed across the ocean, waves rising higher than towers, and bolts of lightning fell like spears. The survivors hiding in the ruins watched in awe as the sea swallowed the alien ships, dragging them into the deep. A final flash of light split the sky, striking the alien command tower and shattering it into fire. When the storm cleared, nothing was left but broken machines and boiling water. The aliens who escaped were few, and their voices echoed with panic. The survivors whispered among themselves. This was not random. This was not luck. The Earth had chosen its target and destroyed it completely. For the first time since the war began, humans felt something they had not known in years: hope. But hope came with fear, for if Earth was strong enough to destroy the invaders, what else was it capable of? The old scientist warned them again. The planet is awake, he said, but we must remember, it does not fight for love. It fights for balance. And balance has no mercy. The second strike came days later, deep in the mountains. The invaders had built weapons there, great machines that drilled into the rock, searching for the planet's energy. They thought they could harvest the Earth itself. But the mountains resisted. The ground began to shake, a low growl that rolled for miles. At first, the invaders thought it was harmless. But the growl grew into a roar. The Earth split, fire and ash exploding into the sky. Volcanoes that had slept for centuries awoke together, spewing rivers of molten rock that melted alien metal like wax. The mountains themselves collapsed, burying factories and soldiers alike. Survivors hiding in nearby caves felt the heat and trembled, but they also smiled through their fear. The planet had defended itself again, and the invaders were powerless to stop it. Word spread even among the aliens. Their machines captured signals of strange energy, movements beneath the crust, storms forming without pattern. Some of them argued that the planet was alive, but their leaders dismissed it. To admit such a thing would mean they were fighting not only humanity but the world itself. Yet fear crept through their ranks. Their weapons worked against people, against cities, against flesh and steel. But how could they fight a planet? The survivors could see their fear. Patrols grew weaker. Attacks slowed. Some machines even abandoned their posts, retreating to safer ground. For the first time, humanity struck back. Small groups of fighters used the chaos to destroy alien machines left vulnerable by storms or quakes. They were no longer only victims. With the Earth striking first, humans followed, turning every disaster into a chance for revenge. But the wrath of the Earth was not always clean. Entire forests were burned to ash, rivers turned black with smoke, and mountains vanished in fire. The survivors knew these were sacrifices, wounds the planet gave itself to destroy its enemy. It was not a gentle protector. It was a furious giant, and when it struck without care for who stood in the way. Many humans were caught in the storms and fire, dying alongside the invaders. Yet those who lived still believed it was better than silence. The planet had remembered them. One night, as the survivors camped in a ruined valley, the ground shook harder than ever before. Rocks tumbled, and cracks opened wide, glowing with red fire deep below. A massive alien walker stumbled on the ridge, its legs sinking into the cracks. It screamed in a metallic voice, thrashing wildly, but the earth pulled it down inch by inch until it disappeared beneath the molten glow. The valley grew quiet after that. Only the rumble of the earth remained. The survivors looked at one another, hearts pounding. The old scientist spoke softly. "This is only the beginning." And he was right. Across the world, storms, quakes, and fire spread. Oceans rose, skies burned, mountains shattered. The invaders had awakened something ancient, something vast and unstoppable. The earth's wrath was no longer whispers. It was a roar that could not be ignored. Humanity had fallen, but their world was fighting back with fury beyond imagination. The survivors knew they were not safe yet. They could still die tomorrow, crushed by stone or burned by fire. But as they stood in the glow of the trembling earth, they felt a strange certainty. The invaders had made a mistake. They thought humanity was weak, but they had forgotten the one truth that would destroy them. No one could conquer the earth itself. The world no longer belonged to the invaders. They still held the skies with their black ships, they still walked the earth with their great machines, but they were not in control anymore. The planet itself had become their enemy, and the survivors could see it in every corner of the ruined land. Rivers no longer followed their old paths. They rose and twisted, swallowing alien machines whole. Forests grew back faster than fire could burn them, roots tearing through metal walls and vines wrapping around weapons until they snapped apart. The earth was changing, reshaping itself into a battlefield where humans no longer fought alone. In the shadows of this chaos, survivors began to gather. They were scattered across the ruins, but slowly, carefully, they found one another. The old scientist guided one group through tunnels and broken highways, whispering that the earth was giving them signs. They followed the tremors in the ground, the sudden rains that led them to drinkable water, the glowing plants that lit their way in the darkness. At first it seemed like luck, but the more it happened, the more they realized it was not chance. The earth was not only fighting, it was guiding. The invaders tried harder to crush the planet's resistance. They built new machines that drilled deep into the soil, hoping to silence the power beneath. They poisoned rivers, hoping to kill what was rising. But the harder they pushed, the stronger the response became. In one valley, the aliens filled the river with their black chemicals, choking its waters. Within hours, the river rose in fury. Its current turned wild, smashing through alien camps and dragging their machines away. Survivors hiding in the cliffs above watched in awe as the water twisted into a whirlpool that pulled everything down, leaving nothing behind but silence. The aliens grew restless. For the first time since they arrived, they argued among themselves. Their leaders demanded more fire, more destruction, more force. But some of them began to hesitate. Their technology had conquered worlds before, but no world had ever fought back like this one. The soldiers did not say it aloud, but fear clung to them. The survivors could see it even from afar, the way patrols no longer stayed long in one place, the way ships fired at shadows in the clouds, the way machines shook when the ground trembled beneath them. Humans began to take risks they never dared before. Small groups struck at alien patrols, using Earth's fury as cover. When a storm split the sky, they attacked in the rain, blades and fire against confused machines. When the ground opened beneath alien walkers, survivors hurled explosives into the cracks to make sure nothing climbed back out. They were still weak compared to the invaders, but they were no longer helpless. Every strike, every victory, no matter how small, carried the same message: humanity was not finished. Still, the Earth's wrath was not gentle. Entire villages were lost when quakes tore through the land. Forest fires spread without warning, swallowing everything in their path. Some survivors begged the old scientist to explain why the planet would hurt its own people. He told them the truth. The earth is not kind, he said. It does not love. It protects in the only way it knows. And protection often demands sacrifice. His words were heavy, but no one could deny them. They had seen it with their own eyes. Yet even in the face of loss, the survivors held on. If Earth was willing to fight, then so were they. The turning point came one night under a sky filled with fire. The invaders had gathered their forces in a ruined city, building a fortress of steel and flame. They believed the planet would not strike them there, that the broken ground was safe. But the Earth had been waiting. The survivors watched from the hills as the ground beneath the alien fortress began to crack. Slowly at first, then wider and deeper. The city shook with a sound like thunder. Buildings collapsed, towers fell, and the aliens tried to run, but the Earth swallowed them whole. The ground closed again, leaving nothing but silence and smoke. The survivors cheered, but the old man did not. He looked at the dark horizon and said, "This is the moment they will not forget. The Earth has proven its power, and now the invaders will unleash everything they have. They will not retreat. They will try to kill the planet itself." His warning silenced the joy, but it also steeled their hearts. They knew he was right. The war was no longer between humans and invaders. It was between the invaders and Earth itself. Humanity was caught in the middle, but now they had a chance. In the following days, more survivors joined the fight. Some carried weapons, others only hope, but all of them believed in the same thing. The Earth had awakened, and it was not going to stop. Rivers, storms, mountains, and fire were no longer just parts of nature. They were weapons. They were allies. The invaders had come to destroy a world, but now the world itself had become the battlefield. The survivors stood together on the ruins of their old cities, watching the night sky burn with alien fire. They were weak, yes, but no longer broken. For the first time, they felt that humanity could rise again. The turning point had come, and the war was changing. And somewhere deep below, the Earth stirred again, louder, stronger, promising that the true battle was still to come. The days after the fall of the alien fortress were unlike anything the survivors had known since the war began. For the first time, there was not only silence in the ruins but also strength in human voices. People began to gather, not only in shadows but out in the open. They walked through broken cities and found others like them, joining together in groups that grew larger each day. They carried scars, hunger, and fear, but they also carried something the invaders had tried to crush: hope. The Earth had shown its fury, and humans were ready to follow its lead. The old scientist, who had once whispered of legends, now spoke with more certainty. He told them that the planet was guiding them, pushing them to rise again. And the survivors believed him. They had seen too much to deny it now. When storms covered the sky, they moved under the rain, hidden from alien patrols. When the ground trembled, they knew it was time to strike. The Earth was not only destroying the invaders, it was shielding its children. In the ruins of a destroyed city, a small band of survivors launched their first true attack. They crept into the wreckage of an alien outpost weakened by lightning and fire. The machines guarding it were damaged, their legs half buried in cracked ground. The humans struck quickly, with blades, fire, and stolen alien weapons. For the first time, the survivors fought not to run, but to win. And when the last machine fell, they stood among the wreckage with disbelief. They had done it. They had killed the invaders with their own hands. Their shouts echoed through the ruins, carrying a message that spread like fire: humanity was fighting back. The news traveled fast. Survivors in distant lands began to strike at weak patrols, breaking their fear with every small victory. Guerrilla fighters rose from forests, deserts, and mountains, using the land itself as their weapon. Rivers hid them, caves sheltered them, and storms gave them cover. They were still hunted, still fragile, but they no longer hid like shadows. They were part of the Earth's fury now, and every strike reminded the invaders that the planet's children were not finished. The aliens, however, refused to give ground. They grew more desperate, striking harder with fire that scorched the sky. Cities already ruined were burned again, forests turned to ash. Yet the more they destroyed, the more the Earth fought back. A great storm rolled across an entire continent, tearing ships from the air and drowning armies in floods. Volcanoes erupted where alien machines drilled too deep, choking the sky with ash. It was as if the planet itself refused to surrender even an inch. The invaders fought humanity, but it was Earth that was breaking them. In the growing camps of survivors, voices rose with determination. They began to organize, to share food and weapons, to teach the weak how to fight. Children carried messages, the strong carried blades, and the old carried wisdom. For every survivor lost, 2 more stepped forward to take their place. They had nothing left to lose, and that made them dangerous. One night, under the shadow of burning clouds, the survivors launched their boldest attack yet. They targeted a massive alien machine that had once ruled the battlefield, a walker that crushed entire streets with its weight. For months, no human dared to go near it. But this night was different. The Earth trembled as if giving a signal. The ground cracked beneath the machine's legs, slowing its steps. Survivors rushed forward, throwing fire, blades, and stolen charges. The machine screamed in its metallic voice, firing wildly, but the Earth's quakes kept it off balance. With a final explosion, the walker fell, its giant body crashing into the ruins. The survivors cried out in victory, their voices shaking the night. They had not only survived, they had won. The old scientist stood among them, his face lit by the fire of the wreckage. His voice was quiet, but every ear heard him. "This is the rise of humanity," he said. "We are not just witnesses. We are the hands of the Earth's vengeance." His words became a vow, repeated by the survivors like prayer. From that night, they no longer called themselves survivors. They called themselves fighters. But even as their strength grew, they knew the danger was far from over. The invaders still held the skies, their ships still cast shadows over the world. Yet their fear was clear now. They did not move with the same pride. They did not strike with the same confidence. For the first time, the invaders looked like prey, and the humans felt like hunters. The Earth had given its children a chance, and they were ready to take it. Broken cities became their battlegrounds, wild forests their weapons, rivers their allies. Every storm, every quake, every fire was a reminder that they were not alone. Humanity had fallen once, but it was rising again. And with every victory, no matter how small, the truth grew louder. The Earth's revenge was not only absolute, it was shared by its people. The air was heavy with smoke as the invaders gathered their strength for one last strike. Their ships filled the skies, black shadows that blotted out the stars, and their machines crawled across the Earth in endless lines of fire and steel. The survivors who watched from the ruins knew what was coming. This was not another raid, not another patrol. This was everything the invaders had left, a final assault meant to crush the planet itself. The Earth had humiliated them, broken their armies and drowned their cities, and now they meant to silence it forever. The survivors felt fear, but they also felt something stronger. This was the battle they had been waiting for. If they could endure this storm, the war could end. The ground trembled as the invaders' machines advanced, drilling into the soil, pouring fire into the rivers, burning the forests that had risen against them. Their ships unleashed lightning of their own, energy beams that turned stone into glass. For a moment it seemed unstoppable, a storm of destruction no living thing could withstand. But then the Earth answered. The trembling grew stronger, spreading across mountains and valleys. From the oceans came waves taller than towers, crashing against the invaders' ships. Storms gathered without warning, ripping across the sky with thunder that split the air. Fire poured from mountains, and rivers turned wild, tearing apart machines that had thought themselves unbreakable. The Earth had unleashed its full fury. The survivors charged in the chaos, striking wherever the planet gave them an opening. When a quake split the ground, they drove alien patrols into the cracks. When storms blinded the skies, they rushed forward with blades and stolen weapons. Humanity was not fighting alone anymore. Every tree, every stone, every drop of water seemed to join the battle. The Earth fought with all its might, and the survivors followed like an army born from the ruins. In the middle of the battlefield stood the old scientist, his voice drowned by thunder but his eyes burning with fire. He had spoken of this moment, when Earth would rise with all its wrath. Now he watched it unfold before him, a war that was not only for humanity but for the planet itself. Around him, fighters shouted and struck, their courage born not from strength but from the knowledge that the world was fighting beside them. The invaders pushed back with desperation. Their greatest ships released weapons that shook the skies, beams of energy so bright they blinded the survivors. Entire valleys were carved open by their fire, forests burned to ash in seconds. But the earth did not falter. Every strike was met with greater fury. When they burned forests, the wind rose with storms. When they shattered valleys, mountains erupted. When they poured poison into rivers, the water rose like a living hand and dragged them under. The survivors fought as if they had become part of the storm itself. Groups of fighters brought down alien walkers, using the earth's tremors to topple their legs. Others climbed the wreckage of ships brought low by lightning, turning their own weapons against them. For every human who fell, 10 more rose. The invaders had believed humanity was finished, but they had awakened something stronger than any machine, hope bound with fury. At the height of the battle, the largest alien ship descended. It was a fortress in the sky, a beast of fire and metal, and it unleashed destruction on everything below. Survivors scattered, fearing nothing could defeat it. But the earth had been waiting. The ground shook so violently that cracks spread for miles, glowing with fire from the core. The sky roared with thunder, and then it came, a storm unlike any before, black clouds spinning into a great cyclone. Lightning struck the fortress again and again, tearing its shields apart. A final bolt, brighter than the sun, pierced through its heart. The ship screamed as it fell, crashing into the ocean with an explosion that lit the night like day. The survivors stood frozen, their eyes wide with disbelief. The greatest weapon of the invaders was gone, destroyed not by human hands but by the will of the earth itself. Silence followed for a moment, broken only by the wind and the crackle of distant fire. Then the survivors shouted as one, their voices carrying across the battlefield. They knew now. This was the final battle, and victory was within their reach. The invaders, broken and scattered, tried to retreat. Their machines fled, their ships climbed back into the sky. But the earth did not allow it. The ground rose against them, pulling walkers into the fire. The seas rose higher, dragging ships beneath the waves. The sky itself turned into a weapon, storms chasing fleeing vessels until nothing remained. There was no escape. The planet had been wounded, scarred and burned, but it was merciless now. The survivors fell to their knees as the earth's fury raged around them. Some wept, others shouted, and some simply stared at the sky in awe. They had fought, they had endured, but it was the earth that had won. The invaders were finished, their final assault crushed by a force they could never hope to conquer. As the last alien scream faded into silence, the battlefield grew still. Smoke curled into the air, fires burned low, and the trembling of the earth finally calmed. The old scientist looked at the survivors, his voice quiet but clear. "The war is over," he said. "They thought they could destroy us. But they forgot, this world is alive." His words carried through the silence, and every survivor knew the truth. Humanity had not won alone. They had been the hands, but the earth had been the fist. The final battle was finished. The earth had spoken, and its revenge was absolute. The battlefield was silent. The ground that had once roared with fire and thunder now lay still, broken and scarred but breathing in quiet peace. Smoke rose in thin trails from the ruins of alien machines, their bodies twisted and lifeless across the land. The sky, once black with the shadow of their ships, was clear for the first time in years. The survivors stood among the ruins, their bodies weak, their faces marked with dirt and blood, but their hearts steady. They had lived through the storm. They had seen the impossible. The invaders were gone. The old scientist stood at the edge of a shattered valley, looking out over the destruction. His eyes were tired, but they carried a fire that had not burned in them for many years. Around him, the survivors whispered to one another, their voices trembling as if they could not believe it. Some laughed, others wept, and a few simply stared at the sky in silence. For so long they had known only fear, only the weight of defeat, but now the weight was gone. The air was different, lighter, as if the planet itself had sighed in relief. Far in the distance, the seas rolled calmly, carrying with them the wreckage of the last great ship that had fallen. The earth had shown no mercy. It had torn apart the enemy with storms and fire, drowned them in oceans, buried them in mountains, and broken them with its quakes. The survivors had fought bravely, but they knew the truth. It was the earth that had saved them. The planet had risen to protect itself, and in doing so, it had protected its children. Humanity had fallen once, but the world had carried them back to their feet. The survivors began to rebuild in small ways. They searched through the ruins for food, water, and shelter. They pulled the wounded from the rubble and carried them with care. Children who had lived in darkness for so long stepped into the light, their eyes wide as they looked at the sun breaking through the clouds. The forests, though scarred, had already begun to grow again. Green shoots pushed through the black soil, flowers bloomed among the ashes, and rivers that had been poisoned ran clear once more. It was as if the earth was healing itself, slowly but surely, preparing for a future free of invaders. But even in this new peace, fear lingered. Some survivors wondered if the invaders would return. Others feared the wrath of the earth itself, worried that its anger might not fade, that it might still judge humanity for all the wounds they had given it long before the war. The old scientist listened to their worries, his face grave, but when he finally spoke, his words brought silence. "The earth has made its choice," he said. "It rose against those who sought to destroy it. It protected us because we are part of it. But we must never forget. If we betray this world again, its wrath will return, and next time it may not save us." The survivors nodded, their hearts heavy with understanding. They had been given a second chance, bought not with their strength but with the fury of their planet. They knew they could not waste it. Humanity would have to change, to learn from the scars carved into the earth and sky. The old ways of greed and destruction could no longer guide them. The earth had reminded them of its power, and that memory would never fade. That night, the survivors gathered on the ruins of a broken city. Fires burned in circles, not of war but of warmth. They sat together, sharing food and stories, their voices rising into the quiet night. For the first time, laughter echoed without fear of drawing attention. The stars shone brightly above, untouched by smoke or shadow, as if the heavens themselves had been waiting for this moment. The boy who had once touched the glowing flower sat beside the scientist, his eyes fixed on the sky. "Do you think they will come back?" he asked softly. The old man placed a hand on his shoulder, his voice calm. "If they do, they will remember what happened here. They will remember that Earth is alive. And they will fear it." The boy nodded, comforted, though deep inside he understood the truth. The memory of Earth's fury would never leave those who had witnessed it, not human, not alien. As the fires burned low, the survivors lay under the open sky, their breaths steady, their dreams no longer haunted by endless defeat. The earth was quiet now, resting after its fury, but its presence was still felt. Every tremor in the soil, every gust of wind, every drop of rain carried a reminder. The world was alive, and it would never again allow itself to be broken. In the days that followed, the survivors began to spread out, rebuilding small homes among the ruins, planting seeds in the black soil that surprisingly bloomed with strength. They were few, and their work would be hard, but they were not alone. The earth had stood with them once, and though its wrath had passed, its strength remained. Humanity had a chance to rise again, not as conquerors, but as children of the planet that had saved them. And so the story ended where it had begun, not with silence, not with defeat, but with a promise. They had destroyed our world, and the earth had answered with no mercy. Humanity had fallen, but Earth's revenge was absolute. And from that revenge, a new beginning was born.